Jesus says, if you'll be my disciple, you have to take up your cross and follow me. This is the yoke that he speaks of, that he says is easy and light. That really doesn't make much sense if you consider it according to the world's standards of ease and burdensomeness. But again, as we mentioned, if you consider this life in the light of eternity, as Paul says, what does it mean if we are to suffer for a little while, if we are to be glorified for eternity? We have to keep that perspective in all things that we do, to judge all things by the light of eternity. Many of us have difficult crosses to bear, ways that we find it difficult to live just and upright lives, ways in which we find it difficult to live peaceably with others, ways in which we particularly find it difficult to live in accord with good order and chastity, ways that we in particular may find it difficult to live in moderation, right? The idea that for some, not having a second dessert is a matter of great difficulty, controlling one's eating. I'm not trying to be funny. I said second dessert, but eating too much, right, or eating too often, or comfort eating, or anxiety eating, right? This is sinful. Because it's immoderate and it's bad for our physical health. We are both body and soul, so anything that we do that is intentionally and directly unhealthy for our body is something that needs to be well moderated. And for a lot of people, that's not an issue. But for some people, it really is a hard thing. For some people who struggle with same-sex attraction, most people don't. And so it's hard to understand the burdensomeness and the difficulty of the fear of being alone if one is to live chastely in the world, or abandoning the integrity of the faith and living in a duplicitous and an unchaste way. It's a difficult burden that's shared, that's really not shared by anybody, but is experienced by that particular person. Other people are addicted to alcohol, and to the idea of giving up drink is like a little kid giving up their security blanket. Right? These are really, really heavy burdens. The list could go on. I mean, we could talk. For every one of us here, we could talk about a particularly heavy cross that we carry in a way that's more burdensome and heavier for us than it is for anybody else in the room. The Lord says, take up your cross and follow me. What that means is it's okay that we struggle. It's okay that you don't do life great, or that there are times when you don't do life great, or that for your entire life, something in your life is hard and you don't think it should be. It's okay. The Lord gives us each our crosses. I was talking with somebody yesterday who struggles tremendously with horrible bouts of, and long, persisting bouts of depression. And I told him, I said, obviously, the thing is that these words really don't have the impact, when one would want them to have on a person. But I said, look, the Lord's given you this cross because He knows who you are, and He knows that you can handle it. He didn't ask if you'd enjoy it or like it. He knows you can handle it. He didn't give it to me because He knows I'm a big wuss. And I would just implode on myself if I had any slightly more difficult struggles than I already have, than I have. Right? But for Him, as horrible as that is, and as much as I would love to take that away from Him, that's a cross that the Lord has allowed, maybe not directly intended for, but allowed Him to bear. And I followed that up with another true statement, which probably had no impact. It's hard to hear that suffering has value when you're in the middle of suffering, which is why it's important to consider how much value suffering has before you start to suffer, right? But I said, if you suffer this well, if you carry this cross well, which the Lord has given you, knowing that you can handle it, tremendous eternal fruit will come out of that. A fruitfulness that you may not reap the reward of in this present life, but will have reward for eternity. Eternity. And maybe not even just for yourself, but for others. Each one of us taking up our cross and bearing them with Christ is given that opportunity to be that united with Him, that the fruitfulness of our own bearing of our own crosses, unique and particular to each one of us as it is, allows us to share in the fruit of Jesus' cross, which is nothing short of salvation. Being baptized and united to Christ then, and sharers in His mission, we become, as the Second Vatican Council calls us, alter Christus, other Christs. Why? Not because we're properly divine. We're only divine in the sense that we share that nature with Jesus. We're alter Christus because we share in the office of Jesus. We become agents of salvation. And when we understand that each one of us carrying our own unique crosses and doing it well, not perfectly, and sometimes we set that cross down. That's what impatience means, right? Patience means suffering. Impatience is refusing to suffer, right? If Jesus were to come down from the cross, it would have been because He became impatient. He wouldn't suffer anymore, right? So when we lose our temper, when we act out, when our anxiety from carrying a cross that we're carrying kind of slides out sideways, that's impatience, right? We very, very rarely use that word correctly when people talk about losing their patience. Impatience is when you choose to set down your cross, even for a moment, right? So when we live our lives, when we do pick up our cross, and we do carry our cross, even though we carry it imperfectly, or even though we become at times impatient, and we just want nothing more than to throw off this burden, to just be done with it, and we misbehave out of that desire, right? We're still nevertheless united to Christ, united to His work, sharing in His mission, and when we do carry our cross well, sharing in bearing the fruit of the salvation of all of humanity. Sharing in the salvation of souls. Our own, yes, but also others. I truly believe when we get to heaven, we're going to not only stand before the Lord in judgment, but we will have witnesses that will testify on our behalf. Friends, neighbors, people we never even knew, who we have aided in their own spiritual journey to heaven by our suffering as we suffer, by our carrying the cross as we carry it, by our persistence, our perseverance. And we will be rewarded by Jesus for doing the work that He came to do, by sharing with Him in that work. Now, when we understand that, when we understand that the huge gravity of what we do when we bear our burdens, when we carry our crosses, when we are disciples of Jesus unflaggingly, then all of a sudden that cross becomes light. You're almost excited to carry it. You mean to tell me if I pick up this sandbag and carry it a mile, I'll get $100 million? All of a sudden, give me 2 sandbags, I'll carry it, no big deal. Right? Because of the scope, how it looks in light of the reward. The burden is made smaller. Our crosses in our lives have the ability to almost all but disappear when we put them in light of the reward, the fruit that they bear. This is how Jesus can say, my burden is easy, my yoke is light. because it's the yoke of charity. It's doing for love, and it's gaining love's reward. Moreover, when we do this with Jesus, we have a clean conscience, and there is nothing more valuable in life. Having dirtied my conscience more times than I'd like to admit, there is nothing more valuable in this life than a clean conscience. It's the equivalent of somebody saying, at least you have your health, right? I don't think there's much, but what's the sense in gaining what's the sense in having $1 billion if you're a paraplegic and you're blind in one eye and deaf and like you don't have your health? That's why people can say it is really good that at least you have your health. We can suffer so much in this life if we can say, I have peace in my conscience. All is well with my soul. Right? And so for the fact that we carry our cross for charity, out of charity with Jesus, and that in carrying our cross we are in right relationship with Him, which gives us a clean and a burdenless conscience, we really can say and can really experience the truth of what Jesus says. That He says, take my yoke upon you, for it is easy and my burden is light. And in so doing, you may come to me and have rest. We remember St. Augustine's words, my heart is restless, O Lord, until it rests in you.